I think those concepts within that Torah 4, and what I love about this teaching is that, you know, you don't realize it, but from Torah 1 to where we're at now, you know, fixing to get into Torah 5, is that it's just building upon. It's just layers and layers, you know, adding on to this concept of God and His name, that there's nothing else. And then, like you said earlier, that, you know, He concealed Himself from Himself just to do good and bestow goodness upon His creation. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
And because he is good, and he all he can do is give, as we see
yeah, that's it.
from
He's a giver. And,
uh,
you know, and then and you know, we hear this concept that, you know, He made us in His image. Well, you know, this can mean a lot of things, you know. But when we raise, by giving charity, when we raise somebody else and lower ourselves, it's like we're like our Creator. You know, he sends suffering to the world to lower somebody, and then
mhm.
suffering makes them return to Torah because they don't want to suffer no more. So everything He does is good upon His creation. You know what I mean? And we're like in His likeness when we give charity and we do the mitzvahs that we're supposed to do, and we study Torah, and
Mhm.
we learn these concepts, and we take them on our life. You know, whether it's, you know, we choose to do, you know, the mitzvahs, you know, what we put in our bodies, you know, what we think about, you know, our output and our input. These, we're all consciously aware, which would fall into the category of the fear of God. And then, you know, you turn that aspect and you lift it up into, for the sake of heaven, for the love of God. You do it simply for the sake of heaven. uh you know, that's the point. You know, that's where uh you know, we should strive for this concept of, what is it, the Benani, I'm not saying that right.
Yeah.
Benani, yeah. And I think it's pretty cool, pretty
Well,
fascinating.
this is the
And Torah.
problem the nations have, is that, you know, we don't understand enough of this stuff, so we cannot make these decisions out of ignorance. So, you know, at some point, somebody's got to push themselves and try to study and try to learn and try to understand these things in order to where we can make knowledgeable decisions on what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it as part of the nation's aspect of it. And so, those that, you know, keep this Torah from us, you know, are basically hobbling us to where we can't make these decisions, because they're, what are they saying? Oh, you don't know enough to make those decisions. Well, I don't, you know, there you go. So, and this is the whole idea of being a light unto the nations, is to give a, you know, to a light of guidance by bringing these truths and these concepts to us in order for us to be able to make these decisions and to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But so the unique place that not only the nations are in, but that the Jewish people are in after 2,000 years of this exile, so to speak, um, you know, we're in this really peculiar place to where we've got to push in order to get a reaction out. And so, you know, a lot of what we do when we bring these teachings or we bring these concepts out into the public, we literally force the rabbis to talk about them. And what are they upset about? They're upset about the idea that we're forcing them to talk about it. You know, what did they told me before? You know, you're forcing us to talk about things that we're not ready to talk about. Well, the nations are ready to talk about them, or else I wouldn't be forcing you to do it. So you have to get ready in order to get us ready, in order to go on and bring in this messianic era that we're getting closer and closer to. So this is what it is. I mean, we're in such a lax state of understanding and knowledge that we have to go into these texts sometimes on our own, and come back out of them and try to understand them, and then try to ask the question to the rabbis to get the answers, because they're not, if the question is, can I go and study the Likutey Moharan? It's like, no, you don't need to be studying that. You see what I mean? That's going to be the answer to the question. But if I ask this question here, and I'm talking about running and returning, and I ask a question about that, I'm liable to get an explanation of it, because I already have that wisdom and understanding about the concept of running and returning. But this is a very peculiar place, because we're such at the onset of this process, that we're pushing for the answers, and so they get aggravated, and but they answer, and because why we keep asking, and we ask this question every week. We ask a different question every week, but we're asking these questions, and so they want to say, hey, stop stop making us talk about things we don't want to talk about. So you have to be, you can't study those things, you can't answer those questions, you're not supposed to be doing that, because we don't want to talk about them. We don't want to give you these answers. We don't want to do this.
Right.
But I don't think what's understood here, and what's going on, I believe that we're so close to the Mashiach that we can't help but ask these questions. The nations can't help but to ask these questions, and that's that should be an indicator to the rabbis to understand where they are in this messianic process. That they're closer than they think. When you have guys from Texas asking you about these concepts and studying these materials, because this is how they're led to do so, by Hashem. We didn't dream it up on our own. We didn't come up with this like, hey, it's be a nice thing to go and study all this Jewish stuff, in the middle of Texas, from coming out of a long history of generations and generations of being Christian. Doesn't make any sense. The only answer is the Mashiach, the nearness of Mashiach, and they understand this and they know it. And
Yeah, but I think too, I've been thinking about this concept of what you're talking about with the rabbis, and this, not wanting to have to think about these questions, and I can't help to think about the story of Jonah, going to Nineveh. Why didn't he want to go to Nineveh? What was one of the main reasons? People that know the story from the Vilna Gaon's point of view and other sages is that, okay, first of all, who was the king of Nineveh?
it was the Pharaoh.
It was the Pharaoh. And what did the Pharaoh know? He knew who Hashem was. I mean, he survived the plagues, right? He
Right.
saw God's will. He saw God lead his people out of his land. He knew that he was the God of gods, King of kings. So when Jonah was tasked to go to Nineveh to tell him, hey, you need to start doing right. What was one of Jonah's big fears? That
Well, he had a couple of them. One of them is that he knew if they repented, then Hashem would relent, and he'd be branded as a false prophet. And then the other one was, he knew that if he went to Nineveh and Nineveh repented and Israel didn't, Hashem would judge Israel harder, because look, these people in Nineveh repented and you didn't.
Yeah, and these people are, they're people of the nations.
Right.
So I think that's, I think about that story, because the Jewish people are in a position, they're in a, we can always sit here and say that, hey, why won't you just answer the question? Why won't you just teach us? Well, the things that I'm sorry, I'm not laughing to mock it. I'm laughing because I think if I just can't understand why people don't see this and they don't hold on to this and understand what the Jewish people have been through the
Right.
Holocaust, the exiles, and the persecution throughout people of the nations. Not saying that we're persecuting the Jew, but anybody outside of Judaism that tries to try to come into Judaism, ends up perverting it and ends up hurting the Jewish people. I mean, that's just history. Now, you don't have to agree with that, but then you just ain't agreeing with facts, because that's a fact. Every point in history, every time the Jewish people have let the Gentiles in, it's been a destruction and a deeper and deeper exile, and it's never worked out for them. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's
But
what we were talking about before the
but
class.
huh?
That's what we were talking about before the class. That the Jew believes that the nations or the non-Jews are always going to disappoint them.
Well,
They're
that's
always
like
going to let them down. They're always going to disappoint them. So why am I going to start teaching you this if all you're going to do is disappoint me, and you're going to take it and you're going to twist it and you're going to turn it into your religion, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And when the problem all along has been the information was not out there, and the only time we become disappointing is we become disappointing out of ignorance.
right, and that's where I was headed with it.
Okay.
It's easy for me to sit here as a non-Jew and say I'm not like those other non-Jews. Easy for me to say. It's another thing for a Jew to hear that statement and say, "Man, I don't know you. What are you? You got tattoos on your arm. You got a shaved head. You got a lit up product structure behind you that, that ain't culture. It's a piece of art. Okay, is why I made it. But I mean, all those little things at the end of the day, they're all red flags. Now, this ain't all rabbis. There are rabbis that, man, they'll teach you anything you pretty much want to know, as long as what you said, and this is the very important part, if you ask the right question, so they can vet you and say, okay, he thinks
Mm.
like Torah. You know what I mean? Like he's a little ignorant when it comes to this because he just don't know any better, but he's thinking on the right path here.
Yeah,
He's
he's
on to
asking a
something.
Torah question.
He's asking a Torah question, and he's removed himself from these other Western concepts of God, and he's getting a what is it, a Yiddish mindset instead of a Goy mindset, and I think that's what's important. So there are rabbis, but here's the problem, you know. You're right. Even the rabbis, they won't publicly. If you're looking for public um, acceptance, it's not going to be there yet, unfortunately. You know what I mean? But if you truly want to study the Torah and you have a question in mind, there's rabbis that'll help you,
You
that'll
get a
guide
well.
you.
Look, there is no reason. I mean, there's a reason that all of these works are
In
in
English.
in English. All these books behind me and all around this room, that this room is full of Jewish books translated into English. For
Well, this
what?
one, this one's right on the internet for free.
Yeah, for
You
what?
know, yeah, for
You
for us
don't
to,
think that it's in preparation for this very day, this very
yeah,
time when the nations are going to start asking these questions, and you know they're not going to get an answer because they're not asking the right question. They don't know enough to ask a question.
yeah. They
Until
don't know
they
enough
start
to
reading these
formulate a
books,
question.
they start understanding, and they start reading,
Right.
and they start understanding, and they start formulating the right Torah questions to where the rabbi can't help but to to answer it. So this is all a process that's going on, that it's bigger. It's bigger than Judaism, and it's bigger than Goyism. This is the era of Mashiach formulating itself and coming into realization. It's not a switch that you turn on and off and just, well, you open up your eyes one morning and Mashiach's here. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have that to where one day he's here, but there's a process building up to it, and it's called the footsteps, the final footsteps of Mashiach. And the Rebbe said that we're no longer in that we're in the time of Gula right now. And so that was back in 1987, I believe he said that we were in the time of the Gula. And that we know that we're even past the final footsteps of Mashiach. And so, this is where we're at, and the nations are saying, teach me this Torah. And, and, and we're trying to figure out this process of how to do it. Some rabbis are taking a more stringent view,
Right.
and saying, no, we're
That's
not
right.
teaching you. We can't teach them anything. And some of them are taking a very lenient view to where, let's just teach them everything. It's all in English anyway. They're going to read it. They're going to start figuring it out. It's better that they understand it correctly. So we're just going to teach them. And then there's some that take the moderate view to where, we'll wait till they ask the question and we'll answer their questions. And I think that's a fair view to take, is this moderate view, to where if a rabbi is asked a Torah question, then he should give a Torah answer.
Well, you know what it reminds me of, and I'm gonna go back to my electrical analogies here, because that's what that's what I am. I'm an electrician. So, I never could understand when I was an apprentice. Man, the journeyman would let me run the pipe. He'd let me pull the wire. He'd let me do all this and that. But when it came time to make something up hot, he just wouldn't let me do it. And I was like, man, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. No, you're not ready. Go ahead, run your pipe. Your pipe looks really good. I'm really proud of you. Now I'm going to teach you how to run rigid pipe. Well, I don't want to run rigid pipe. I know how to run pipe. Well, I'm telling you, it's not the same. Yeah, the bends are same, but the way you measure it, the math, it's all a little different. And it's harder. It's more constrictive. You can't just get a bandsaw out and cut it right here and add a coupling. You got to go thread it. You got to put oil on it. There's a lot more to it, so you learn that, and you're like, okay, now can I get in this switch gear? Well, the switch gear is hot. I don't understand. I get it. It's fine. I'm fine. I can do it. Well, it's kind of like you're saying, well, might as well teach him, because he's going to end up doing it anyway. But at the same time, you're responsible for that person. You're responsible. You have to know, if you're any kind of decent human being or decent journeyman that's going to train an apprentice, the last thing you want to do is get him hurt, or you hurt, or somebody else around you and him hurt. So, but there comes a day where you got to take the training wheels off, and he's going to do it. If he's ever going to be an electrician, he's going to have to do it. Okay, bud, this switch gear is hot. You got to run these wires. That's a hot bus. I'm going to let you pull these wires in here, and I'm going to stand right here, and we're going to do this together. Okay. And we're going to be real safe, and we're going to go really, really slow, because guess what? There is no second. We don't get a second mistake here. You got to do it. Okay. So you let him do it. He gets comfortable, and then one day he gets shocked. You know what I mean? And you know what? As much as you taught him and as much as he was careful, nothing cautions you more until when you get hit by electricity, all those words of your journeyman from the past just start popping back in your head. Slow down. Don't take shortcuts. Pay attention. Be safe. Nobody's in a hurry. No point in running. All these things start, and you're like, okay, you're right. And then eventually you become the journeyman, and then you have to go through this process and guide somebody else through. So, for the Jew, I understand when it comes to us, yes, all this is translated. It's all in English. We're going to read it. Now, they can either guide us through it, so that we don't turn it into something that it shouldn't be, or, we don't use our own the word exegesis, which is eisegesis, which means preconceived notion. Basically, we don't take our Goyish mindset and pervert some of these concepts. So that's and they do that,
Yeah,
but for
it's
them,
natural. It's a natural process.
it's a natural process, and I think they're guiding through us at the fastest pace they can without it trying to fall apart. You know what I mean?
They're cautious about it. They're
They are
cautious about
cautious,
it. But and it's understandable, but it's inevitable also.
Yes, it's going to
It's
happen.
not. It's not. It's not going to be. It's not going to be the controlled world that they want as rabbis. You may can do that within the constructs of Judaism, and after thousands of years of doing this and creating this very controlled society, when you're dealing with the nations, you don't have that. And we don't have another couple of thousand years to wait for you to develop it.
Right.
We got to figure out how to work it out. And the
Time is
main
speeding
thing is,
up.
and this is the main thing here, is if a goy has to trust Hashem more than he fears this made up Gentile hell in order to leave the church and to come into Torah and come into that, then it's fair for the Jew and the rabbi to trust Hashem enough to bring us in and to teach us and to do that. Both of us are going to have to trust Hashem if we want to see this come about, and we want to see the Mashiach, and we want to see the Messianic era. It's not going to be just us trusting him is going to get it done. The Jew's going to have to trust him as well.
Yeah, but too, I think in all fairness, I think you have to remember something. I think everybody does. There's nobody, well, I'm talking about people here in America. We don't walk out of our houses here in America, most of us, 90% of us, where somebody wants to kill us just because who we are.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask.
Well, I know. That's why I said 90%. But what I'm saying is, in Israel, every day they wake up and walk out of their house, there's people of the nations that want to kill them for just being born who they are and living in the land they're living in. Period.
Mhm.
Just because they can't even explain it. They can't even, why? You know what I mean? Oh, well, it's our land. Well, it was our land. Oh, yeah, we agree, but it's ours. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like you have to just completely throw out history and all knowledge of everything that is and was and will be. But they're the only people on earth. I know people say, "Oh, there's other races." No. There's not another people that walk this earth that people just want to kill them just for being born who they are. There might be times in history where other races and other people of the world were executed and killed and put in captivity and sold in slavery. That's happened to almost every people. If you want to get down to it, if you really want to get down to it, it's happened to almost everybody. But nowhere in history has it happened like it happens to the Jewish people. Just because of where they're located and who they are, and because of what God they serve.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And so what? So here's the big caution. Here's the question: what does that do to somebody's mindset? Only person who can answer that question or even try to understand that is a Jew. So that's why I've always just been, hey, I'm not concentrated on the people that don't want to teach us, that want to take the most stringent view. Fine. Mm-hmm. I respect you just as much as I respect the person who's teaching me, because even though I don't understand it, I can I can wrap my head around that. I can know that I don't understand what it's like for you and how you came to that mindset, because I've never lived in that way of thinking. Mm-hmm. So I'm just grateful for the teachers that we do have, and there's also one that, like you said, man, it's all been translated just about.
Yeah.
more than my lifetime could even read.
We have these rabbis teaching all this very same book. You sit there and can watch the whole videos of all of his teachings.
Yeah,
in English,
free.
and online on this internet thing. And then
Yeah.
but they're going to tell you, like I said, there's those going to tell you you ain't supposed to learn it. You ain't supposed to do it. You ain't supposed to go. You ain't supposed to go listen to it. I don't know what they expect out of it, but it's not. It's nonsensical. It doesn't make any. It doesn't make any sense to what they're asking, what they're doing. If it's out there and the Jewish people put it out there, then you become responsible for it in English, just like you're responsible for it in Hebrew.
Right.
And if you're going to take responsibility, if you're going to take the responsibility for Torah in Hebrew, then take its responsibility for Torah in English or in Japanese or in Korean or whatever you got, in whatever it's in. If you're going to do it.
Yeah, and I agree. I both can be true at the same time. What you're talking about and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it is
but
true.
I think the problem is what you see within the non-Jew movement is there's this sect of people within, this Noahide Ger movement that take this, all the rabbis that have the stringent view, and that's all they want to talk about, and they just get mad, and they get mad at the rabbis, and they just call the whole thing they just blow it up and say it's all a farce. I believe in Torah, but the rabbis, this is just a joke, because that's what happens.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
That whole thing of Ger and Noahide, it's all a smokescreen. It's all about studying Torah. It's all it's ever been about.
That's all it's ever been about. All these debates about Ger and Noahide, it's just for Torah. We're just trying to learn Torah. What are we?
It's just the idea between stringent and moderate and lenient views from their own rabbinical, from their own halakha. They're the ones that have stringent, lenient, and moderate halakha. We didn't make it up; they made it up. And so now we're sitting here arguing Ger and Noahide for what? All we're talking about is studying and learning Torah.
It's Torah.
That's all it's ever been about. And they want to make it about Noahides or Gers, and there's no Ger Toshav, and there's no this and there's no that. Right. Well, there's no Noahide either. So where you at now? Where we at now? Who's going? Now where are we at with studying and learning Torah? That's the question. And all the rest of this is just a bunch of hoopla to entertain people.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it is. It is a bunch of hoopla for entertainment, because you know what? I can still have those debates about what you just talked about, but I'm still going to study this, right? I'm still going to read this. I'm still going to listen to that. Yeah, that's why we're right here. I'm still going to listen to the rabbi on YouTube that has about 90 classes so far on this book, and he's giving great classes. If any of y'all want to check him out, it's not called Breslov. Just look up Breslov Likutey Moharan. I mean, it's when you see the you'll see it, because there's a class. There's like 5 or 6 classes for each Torah part within it. You can't miss it. And I'm sure he's not the only one giving the classes on it. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'll keep researching and debating the name, because that's all Torah. Like you said, it's all Torah.
There's
nothing else here.
His name. So what are we doing?
Torah. We just said it. Weren't you paying attention? We're doing Torah.
All right, very good.
I'm gonna stop this.